In this video, I'd like to consider the differences between the rulership of the West and the rulership of, I think we could just say the rest, those who are generally non-Western or non-infected by contemporary Western notions or ideas. Now, I speak as somebody who, of course, who is from the political West, and of course, the political West involves countries that aren't necessarily in the geographical West. It's, as I said, more of a political designation. I'm from the United States, and the West includes the United States and Canada and Europe, mostly, especially Western Europe. I think when you get to Central or Eastern Europe, it gets a little bit more complicated. And the West also includes Australia and New Zealand. So all of the Anglosphere is, alas, part of the West. And I say alas because of the state of the West right now, and the state is particularly of the rulers of the West and their proclivities and the cultures that the culture that they are trying to seed into the West, the kinds of ideas and notions and beliefs that they want to make predominant in the West, with a few exceptions. Now, when I talk about all of this, of course, it's always more complicated because there are loud voices of dissent within the West, and I count myself as one of them. I don't know, I'm not a terribly influential dissenter, but I am loud, certainly in my own way. But in the West, the style in the last 30 years, particularly, since the fall of the Soviet Union, and I have a reason why I believe this is the case, and I go into this a bit in past videos and also in something I've written, but that's a different matter. I won't elaborate on that right now. It's related, but it's not the thing I want to focus on right now. For the last 30 years in particular, rulers of the Western world have generally ruled in a manner that is antagonistic towards their ostensible constituencies. That is to say, the rulership of the West treats the citizenry of Western countries, what could be called natives of the West. Right. Now, when I say natives, I mean citizens. I don't mean the original indigenous inhabitants of countries like, the one that I live in, like the American Indians or the the Maori in New Zealand, or the Aborigines, but native in the sense that these are people who have lived there, who have a background there, who have history there, who have family there, and who, generally speaking, are white. Okay, it's not exclusively a racial thing, but it is largely a racial thing. The rulership of the West treats the Western natives, as I have called them here, as if they were the problem, and as if the idea is that we need to, in order for progress to be made, there needs to be fewer natives. The native population needs to be diluted significantly with exotics, with people from elsewhere, and that the natives who do remain here need to reproduce far less, and They need to, if they must go on existing, they need to be just more or less live their lives being apologetic for their existence, and to recognize that their race is and their culture and their history is a cancer on the earth, and the sooner that cancer can be eradicated, the better. This is the predominant strand, even though this sounds completely radical and completely out there and completely like, when you really think about it, it makes your head explode, or it should make your head explode. Like, especially in an ostensible democracy, why would the rulers, the elected leaders, of course the elected leaders are oftentimes not really elected, because elections are often a sham, but also, even if the elections are legitimate, the elected leaders are not the true leaders. There is an oligopoly. There are oligarchs. There are powerful forces that are steering, that are treating the elected leaders basically like puppets, like mandarins, stick puppets. So it just seems crazy that should be the predominant ideology of the West, and yet it is. And it seems that the rulership of the Western world is not interested in promoting the health, the wealth, and the well-being of the populations that they're supposed to be representing, but just the opposite. They're promoting the notion that the natives that they are supposed to be representing need to cease to exist, or at least be very strongly diluted. And in the foreign policy pursued by the rulership of the West, there is no indication that any of this is motivated by a desire to promote the well-being of the native populations. In fact, it seems to all be about enhancing the power and authority and control of the rulership of what's called the military-industrial complex. That's the state of things in the Western world right now. And in places not infected or affected by the West, the very opposite is true. In countries like Russia and China, which, of course, I'm not saying that these countries are in any way perfect or close to perfect. Russia is certainly an authoritarian country. China's something closer to a totalitarian country. But I would say that when countries like Russia and China act, they tend to act in a manner that is consonant with a concept or an idea of enhancing the well-being of their constituencies, of the people that they are supposed to be representing. I'll give the example of China, the atrocities committed by the Chinese state, like their behavior towards the Uyghur population or towards the Tibetan population. these are, I think we can say that these behaviors on the part of the Chinese authorities are wrong, and ought to be called to account. But I think what you find uh, among the Chinese authorities is they promote things like the persecution of the Uyghurs or the persecution of the Tibetans, um, on behalf of the population that they are supposed to be serving. So depopulation in the West means, or population change, population displacement in the West, what's been called the Great Replacement, which some have said is a far right myth, but I mean it's not. It's the policy. It's the standard policy of the standard Western ruling class. It's to bring in as many immigrants as possible, probably, more than is possible, and to let as many in as possible, to not guard the border so more can get in. So what you have in Western countries is the conscious displacement, the conscious and intentional displacement of the native population with a foreign population. What you have, however, conversely, in China is the opposite. When they persecute the Uyghurs and when they persecute the Tibetans, they seek for there to be population change or displacement, but it's the very opposite. They're actually saying we want more of our own kind to predominate in Tibet and to overwhelm the numbers of these ethnically other people. We want more Han Chinese in Tibet, and we want the Uyghurs to be miscegenated with Han Chinese, so that the Uyghur gene dies out and the Han Chinese gene predominates. So, even to conclude this bit about the behavior of the non-West, the ruling class of the non-West, even when the ruling class of the non-West oversteps their bounds and behaves tyrannically, they do so out of an idea of promoting the well-being of their own people. In the West, when Western powers step out of line and behave tyrannically, they do so in a way that is to the detriment of the people that they are supposed to be representing. So, in the West, the current state of things is for the ruling class to promote ideas, notions, and to foster a culture that is hostile to the native culture of Western countries. And that to me and to many others is just perverse. It's an inversion. It's the very opposite of what a ruling authority, that rules for the ostensible good of the people. It's the very opposite of the way they ought to behave. So in the East, in China and Russia and other places that don't go by the Western model, they don't seek to shame and belittle and pathologize their own people who are traditionally of their tribe, if you will. which is which has become just I mean, it's become a standard thing in the West. I don't think we should. I think for those of us in the West, we should take stock of how perverse this tendency of our ruling class is, and take steps peacefully, of course, to replace this perverse ruling class, and to install a ruling class that rules on behalf of its own citizenry, and promotes their health, wealth, and well-being in the manner that non-Western countries do. So we would be well advised to follow the contemporary non-Western model here in the West today in order to restore things to their proper non-inverted manner of ruling and manner of existing.